Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today I'm excited to present this red-green delirium aggro deck. It's a deck you're probably already familiar with for the most part, the key creatures being Fear of Missing Out, which can discard a card when it enters and draw, with delirium enabled, meaning 4 or more different card types including creature, land, instant, sorcery, but also enchantment, artifact, and planeswalker in this deck. If we have at least 4 of those types, when the Fear attacks, we get to untap one of our creatures, and that creature gets to attack for a second time, and that's one of the main abilities we're going to try to abuse in this deck once we get both a Monstrous Rage and a Violent Urge to pump up one of our creatures. Violent Urge also a delirium card, so we need to have those 4 types by the time we cast it, and then gives 1 additional power and double strike. So combine that with Monstrous Rage and maybe an additional attack from our Fear of Missing Out, and you can see how we can very quickly deal a lot of damage. Then another key creature is the Wildfire Wickerfolk, just because it's both an artifact and a creature, also has built-in haste and trample with delirium. We've got the Beastie as another artifact creature, can attack once we have delirium, and will mill a card each turn, so also a good enabler. And then Breakout is also very useful, as we get to look at the top 6 cards of our library, find a creature. If its mana value is 2 or less, we can put it onto the battlefield with haste, so it makes it more consistent that we find Fear of Missing Out and some of our other creatures, and also adds sorcery into the mix, which is another extra card type for delirium. And then the Keen-Eyed Curator is kind of a hidden gem in this deck. While it doesn't specifically say delirium on the card, it is quite synergistic in the deck, since once we get enough types for delirium, we might have some extra cards that we don't mind exiling with the Curator, and then we can still get those 4 types exiled, so it turns into a 7/7 Trampler, which is quite effective. Plus it has that built-in Graveyard Hate for opposing graveyard decks, so very useful against Omniscience combo as well. And then one of the newcomers from Tarkir Dragonstorm is Tersa Lightshatter, 3/3 haste. When it enters, we can discard up to 2 cards and then draw that many, so that's another great discard outlet, another haste creature, so it perfectly fits into the strategy as well. Then topping off our curve, we also have 2 Fly Traps, which can give us additional +1 counters with delirium, and sometimes we can even get to super delirium, since we're also playing planeswalkers in this deck as an extra card type, and then we get to maybe double the counters we place on our creatures. And then Ren and the Realmbreaker is that planeswalker, can also fill the graveyard with a -2, so it's also a good enabler, and against control, being able to turn our lands into 3/3 creatures is pretty useful for getting the last points of damage across. And then finally Seed of Hope, another cheap instant that will mill 2 cards, can put a permanent from among them in hand and gain 2. Not quite as good as it was in previous builds, since I've added more instants and generally non-permanent cards in the deck, so if we mill Violent Urge and Monstrous Rage, we won't be able to grab those, but still a cheap way to enable delirium early on. And then, of course, Tersa, once we have enough cards in the graveyard, can also randomly exile a card from our graveyard that we get to cast, so that one is quite exciting with our 1-mana pump spells, as we might still be able to cast them before damage is dealt. And then the mana base has a few lands that can also help out: Commercial District, Surveilling 1 when it enters tapped, and then a Fabled Passage later can also be untapped if we already have enough lands in play, but also guarantees land as an extra type in the graveyard, and then just as many red-green dual lands as possible. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the play. We have double Violent Urge, which is not ideal, but we can discard at least one of them. Yeah, I think we'll try this. Could also fetch and then set up turn 2 Fear, discard Beastie, so we have creature and artifact, we'll have land, and then discard instant and we have delirium. Probably still want to get red, since we want double red perhaps. Another Beastie, so now I don't feel bad discarding it. So our opponent's red-white seems to be more controlling. Alright, still gonna do this before attacking. Discard Violent Urge for delirium. They're gonna get lost. So now I have delirium enabled anyway. Do I keep a Violent Urge? Maybe Beastie is too slow to get going. And then I can play land for turn at least. Fly Trap's not bad. Something like a Monstrous Rage would be pretty decent when we have Violent Urge in hand already. So what are we thinking? could just be Fly Trap, and then when it enters, can distribute 2+1 counters among 1 or 2 targets, so I could just make a 4-powered Fear and attack twice with it already. Could also play Tersa and look for additional land drops. But let's go with the Fly Trap. So that's an attack for 8. And then with Violent Urge, we might present lethal next turn already. Caretaker's Talent is acceptable. They can level it up to keep the Horror token as a blocker. And we do not have Trample. So, can Violent Urge both creatures. Fear still wants to untap itself. So then I guess what makes more sense... Guess we'll explore onto the Fly Trap. There's Monstrous Rage, which would be the ideal draw. Can I get to Super Delirium, adding instants? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we're still 1 off. So, yeah, I guess it doesn't matter here. Can go to attackers, or I can just do this now. Smash. Get some counters. And yeah, opponent's gonna chump and then take a ton more damage. Onto the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. This hand is a little bit light on ways to fill the graveyard. Can eventually do it with Renant Realmbreaker, but we also only have the 1 creature. Do have the combo of Monstrous Rage and Urge, but without Delirium it's not that exciting. This seems better. And then turn 1, probably just play Beastie. Turn 2 Fear. Facing blue-white. Well, if it turns out to be the Omniscience deck, then Curator would have been one of our better cards. And yep, Dragonstorm definitely points in that direction. At least no Omniscience discarded. And Fear discards another Beastie, probably. So we're already close to Delirium. And Breakout should get there. Opponent's got the lockdown, sadly. Okay, let's break out and hope to find a creature. And Curator we can put in play. And now we've got some Graveyard Hate as well. Ideally still draw lands, because I might have to keep up a mana on Curator at all times. Opponent says no to another lockdown. Does that mean they have one in hand or some other answer to the Curator? So I can't really play Wicker Folk, but then again if they bounce Curator with Ephara's Dispersal, I also can't replay it and activate, so maybe we just hope they don't mill Omniscience and then just play Wicker Folk attack. And yep, there's the Ephara's Dispersal. So I'll need to draw another land that produces green or mountain before I can replay it. And no Omniscience, at least. And now stock up. And a Dragonstorm, so did they draw Omniscience? It is still a little risky for them to discard it, since I could just draw land to exile it. And I did. But now we're safe to tap out for Tersa, or, let's see, Violent Urge plus Monstrous Rage, is that lethal? Should be. Okay, that works too. That's 16 damage, and that's why we're playing both. Sweet. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a keepable hand. Surveil on 1, turn to Fear, discard. Maybe Artifact Creature. And Fabled Passage can go, I think. So our opponent black-green, ramp with Overlord. And they're off to a great start. So I think we stick to the plan here. Fear, discard Beastie. Most likely to get to Delirium, since we can break out to get there next turn. And now double Flytrap. A little clunky. Best case scenario, break out, find another Fear. Hedron Archive means our opponent's likely ramping out Ugin. So that's going to be rough if they have it in hand. Okay, now Tersa could also get to Delirium. If I discard the breakouts, and then a Flytrap is probably superfluous. Still need a second red source to be able to cast a double Violent Urge, but I think it still has the highest upside here. Okay, we got there. So attack. So the hope is that if they do have Ugin, they don't have a follow-up artifact at least. But then they maybe wouldn't have cast Ironcrag. Yeah, there's Ugin. Fear's gone, that's the more important one actually. Anything else? Add Colorless Mana. And the Solemn. Alright, that's our board taken care of. So it's gonna be almost impossible to get there now. Yeah, that's an impressive... what turn is it? Turn 4, I guess. So, now what can I come up with? Flytrap at least is enabled. Can go Flytrap plus Beastie. Although we'll still need Trample in order to get past all the blockers. So is Cetophobe better? Can Cetophobe maybe find another Fear, cast it, hope to draw Monstrous Rage? Or I can find a Wicker Folk with Trample built in. Still seems more risky than just playing the 2 creatures I have. Ugin draws, gains 3. They can draw with Archive. Lanor Elves is acceptable. And I guess they get Overlord in play now too. Surprised they didn't sack the Archive. So do I mill? May as well, since we could maybe get to Super Delirium for the Flytrap. Step 1 Cetophobe. Although sadly can't draw Monstrous Rage with a Seed, that's the one non-bow. Cetophobe again. Alright, mill the Wicker Folk. That one's got Trample. So what's the play now? Can attack, putting both counters on the Wicker Folk. Can I finish off my opponent here? 6 power, 7 power double strike. A little bit short. I can finish off Ugin. So maybe that's the priority still. And then I can probably get away with attacking with everyone. Counters on Flytrap and Beastie. They're gonna want to block Wicker Folk with Overlords. I guess they get to save Ugin that way. But they'll have to chump with a bunch of stuff. Versus 2 counters on Wicker Folk, 6, 7 power double strike. Then if they block with Overlord, what happens? I guess I can finish off Ugin. Let's try this. Not sure if it's correct. But I'm hoping they just block with an Overlord here. On the Wicker Folk, that is. Alright, so we will lose Flytrap if I don't double strike. Even if I do double strike, we still lose it, so... yeah, then we'll finish off Ugin. So Flytrap down, but so is Ugin. They do get to draw. And they can draw 2 more with the Archive. If they find another Ugin, they can cast it. Portal to Phyrexia. Alright, GG's. They're not being shy about their curve toppers. And then Portal can reanimate all sorts of stuff. Can Tersa steal a win here? I mean, it can hit for 8, which isn't bad, but it's not 15. So, yeah, there's no fear of missing out in my graveyard either. Can maybe hit a Wicker Folk. I think I still need the Violent Urge. Alright, Breakout, can maybe get the Fear. Find a Curator, that's actually useful graveyard hate against Portal, but it's probably too little too late. Because they already get to reanimate something. Now Curator I can potentially give +4/+4 and Trample, since we can just undo our own Delirium. Opponent's at 15. Kinda hoping they attack with Overlord. Because if we can get to Delirium on Curator and give it double strike, that's a lot of damage. So, yeah, I guess we still go for it. And hope for the best. Can also exile the opponent's stuff. Artifact creature is 2 types in 1. Might want to leave some mana up for Portal as well. So yeah, I can just add instant. Although maybe should have kept the Monstrous Rage as something I can hit with Tersa. That was a mistake. Should have gone with Seed of Hope, for instance. Alright, and then Planeswalker, I guess. Or we can diminish our graveyard size to make it more likely we hit something useful. Right, so Curator's enabled. Attack with both. Don't have to attack with Tersa, but this makes it more likely that Curator presents lethal. Found Seed of Hope. Could cast it. Don't think it matters. Our opponent's keenly aware of Violent Urge. So, Seed of Hope. Cast Urge. And go to damage. And then still have a mana up to exile whatever they try and reanimate. Okay, so the game's still on. Opponent's at 8, so a single attack doesn't do it. But a Violent Urge sure does. Wow, did we actually get there? This is crazy. Opponent cast like a turn 4 Ugin, followed it up with a Portal to Phyrexia, and we still got there. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have a reasonable hand. Fetch for Forest, adds land, Breakout adds Sorcery. Fear can add another type. Now we want to probably Surveil first. Against red-white, maybe Control. Yeah, I'll add Instants. Does let them know that we're running Violent Urge, but it could be tricky to pull off. Impact Tremors points towards a token deck instead. Okay, so we have options. I think I do want to get the Fear online as soon as possible. And we're pretty good at getting to delirium if I discard the Wicker Folk here, because then next turn Breakout will do it. This is a bit weaker in the face of removal on Fear. Just a War Leader's Call, so they're slowly setting up, but the tokens are gonna hurt. In the meantime, we can Breakout, which gets us to delirium. Fetching with Passage also does it. So then I could Monstrous Rage plus Urge the Fear. And this would be 4 additional power. So 6 power double strike, attacking twice. That's game, folks. Opponents at 20 life. We have a fear of missing out on the battlefield, and that's it. This is crazy. And attack again. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have fetch lands, adding land as a type, turn 2 Fear. It's not perfect, but I'll try. And now we'll fetch Forest for Curator. Although I could discard it if our opponent's not a graveyard deck. They also seem to be on Delirium, so then Curator's one of our best cards. And there's Inti. So yeah, assuming this is Delirium, they're not gonna have much removal. So it should be safe to immediately play Curator. And then I can activate it if needed, but I might have to hit my land drop next turn, starting with Seed of Hope. Can still play Fear to discard and draw. And then the Curator is trying to assemble Delirium out of the opponent's graveyard, pretty much. We've got the combo of Monstrous Rage and Violent Urge. And Inti discards Haywire Might. So that's already 3 types, or rather 4 types for Delirium. So it has been achieved. We are on the back foot. And an Expert, so it might be slightly different than what I imagined, more of an exhaust deck. Curator is still great. Found a land, which is useful. So, let's see here. 4 or more card types. So I could just activate Curator 3 times. I'll do it now so there's no instant speed shenanigans. But yeah. Both exiling their graveyard as well as having a 7/7 that can play defense seems good. And then once we enable Delirium, we can go off with Violent Urge. Okay, so what's the best way to guarantee Delirium? I guess Tersa, discard Enchantment, Creature, and Instant. Seems alright. Even though playing Fear is good too. But then it's going to be a little bit harder if I just discard Creature. I could cast Seed of Hope first, since that also ends up in the graveyard. If I don't find an untapped land, it's maybe not ideal. If I do, I guess we'll see where we end up. Fabled Passage is always nice. Added Fear to the graveyard. So we shouldn't have any issues getting to Delirium. So now Flytrap is an option too. Or we can Fear and then next turn set up the double attack, which is likely lethal. So I guess I can ditch a land. Okay. And then we still have the Curator's ability available. So if I Monstrous Rage and Violent Urge the Curator, it goes up to 11 power, double strike, and it gets to attack twice. That's a lot of damage. Experts attacking. Okay, maybe they have a burn spell or a pump spell after all. Discards a Dredger's Insight. Finds a Fear of Missing Out. Yeah, I mean, I don't really want to risk losing the Curator. What's the worst that can happen? I take 9. It's not like they can double strike their own creature here. So I'll let that happen. Then again, if they have removal for Fear, my plan sort of falls apart. But they might just have their own Monstrous Rage. We'll see what happens. Run and Realm Breaker. That's fine. It's gonna start milling. Can still activate Curator, but I couldn't do it to the card that they get back since it's not a target. Opponents get their own Curator. Luckily, no mana to activate it, otherwise they could have foiled their own Delirium. And then here, shouldn't matter too much. Untap. Go to attackers. I guess I even have enough mana for Fly Trap in addition to the pump spells. For good measure. Untap my opponent. Untap Curator. And we're probably not going to get to see the second attack with it. So that's 13, and double strike is 26, times 2, 52 damage. Not bad. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a Keeper. A couple ways we can sequence. I think I like Beastie on 1 and then turn 2 another Beastie plus District. Wait on the breakout. And then turn 3 maybe Fly Trap first. Opponent blue-red. So likely the Prowess deck. At least Beastie survives Burst Lightning. And if we wait for Delirium, so does the Wicker Folk. And they have a Cutter on 2. So next turn they could go Cutter plus 1-drop and make 2 monks already. Drew an untapped land, does that change anything? I think I still like second Beastie plus District. And then add land as an extra type. So if we get really lucky, we could already attack with the Beasties next turn. I guess it doesn't even have to be that lucky if we go for Breakout, but especially if I want to play the Fly Trap. Opponent with talent into Bolt Wave. Can block, so take 2. And I will be milling another land and another land. Okay, so we did not get to 3 types yet, so even if I break out, I'm not guaranteed Delirium. So, yeah, that's a bit of a setback. Can still break out and then maybe hit Fear of Missing Out, discarding something to get to Delirium. So that's maybe worth it. And we got there. So I need to discard creatures good enough. So Curator's probably going. And then I can still Monstrous Rage. Alright, that was quite the turn. Attack. And then Monstrous Rage the Beastie that can attack twice. So we went from 2 out of 4 types to attacking with everyone and top decking a Monstrous Rage to boot. So opponent falls to 3. And now both Fly Trap and Wicker Folk are enabled. Can our opponent deal 15 damage? It's gonna be tough. Bolt Wave, double Monstrous Rage, maybe gets the closest. Or I guess triple Monstrous Rage. Alright, that's a good starting point. Anything else? Yeah, if they actually had another 1 mana spell, we die. Luckily for us, they didn't. And that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We have Survey Land into either Curator or Beastie. Wicker Folk's an option too. Yeah, this seems okay. Facing blue-white. And Scavenger, so an aura deck. Got excited that we might be up against Omniscience with Curator in hand for a second. Fear adds creature and enchantment. Would also be a fine card to cast onto, but we probably want the delirium here. So yeah, the main card we don't want to see is Sheltered by Ghosts, since we don't have removal to punish them for it. So this turn might just be Curator. Next turn we can double spell or play Tersa. That might just be a pixie deck after all. Fear, pick up a land, not a pretty play. Okay, so we have options. Can I get to Delirium? I guess if I use Fabled Passage and discard to the Fear, but then I can't Violent Urge. So a little bit short. So then I may not have an attack with the Curator. At which point do we play Tersa, or I can double spell Beastie and Fear. Maybe ditching the Wicker Folk. Yeah, maybe that's the play. And then next turn I can Tersa plus Urge with Delirium most likely. And draw another Urge. I mean, double Urge is not bad. Can set up a powerful attack with multiple double striking creatures. Fabled Passage will add land, so then we have Delirium. Another Fear picking up a land. Yeah, they're missing those cheaper enchantments. So we should have a great attack with Tersa, since they only have one profitable block. Attack all out. Can untap the Beastie. Opponent blocks the Fear. So they did get to trade. But our opponent's at 7. Curator can also bump itself up here if they don't remove it. So that was also an option, maybe after casting the Violent Urge. Because yeah, we have a very efficient Delirium package. I can hit Enchantment Creature, land instant, for instance. So it only cost me 3 mana to get this to 7/7 Trample. So then I could Violent Urge it first, then get it to 7/7 Trample, and that should take care of the rest. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with what looks like a Keeper. A little bit short on ways to fill the graveyard, but we can discard with Tersa, maybe ditching Wrenn. And we get to Surveil on 1, so that's a guaranteed type. Oh, Lantern's gonna shut down Delirium for us, so that's not ideal. But our deck is still somewhat functional without a graveyard. And a Breakout is a fine draw. And Dragonstorm. So this might be some sort of black-white control deck with Battlefronts and see temporary lockdown. So they're going to be bouncing their own stuff. For now, I guess a Wicker Folk hit for 3 versus Breakout. I guess we'll break out and see what we hit. A Fear of Missing Out. Can discard. Probably want to keep the Planeswalker in this matchup. And then Curator doesn't seem super needed, even though it doesn't add multiple types. Another Dragonstorm. And will our opponent keep up Soul Guide Lantern? I guess they can just sacrifice at any point to exile a graveyard. Alright, so there's no real point in trying to force Delirium, since it's not happening. But Tersa, discard, maybe Fear and a Wicker Folk. Already forces them to use a Lantern to disable Delirium. And then we keep Hasty Creature, Pump Spell, Ren. Possible that Rage isn't needed, but it is good with Fear if we enable Delirium once again. Alright, they let us attack twice. So they're keeping the Lantern. And nowhere to run, answering Fear. And get to untap. Okay, so what about Flytrap? Our opponent's gonna use Lantern most likely in response. Versus Ren. And then I could animate a land and still Monstrous Rage. That seems good. This one entered the battlefield this turn, but it will gain haste, so it's not a concern. Back in the day when 4 mana Koth was around, you had to make sure. So, probably makes sense to target Tersa. Opponent's at 5. Got more hasty threats in hand, so between Wicker Folk and Ren, we can maybe deal the last points. Yeah, I'm guessing this is a United Battlefront deck, but yeah, we haven't seen it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a hand that's okay at enabling Delirium between Beastie and Fear. Can always discard Fear, adding creature and enchantment. So then we just need Beastie to mill a few types we don't already have. Up against a red aggro. On the draw always going to be tough. So we will need a little bit of luck with the top of our deck here. Red-white, so either auras or burn. Slick shots, that's scary when we don't have removal for it. Added creature. Start with Fear. And then I could discard a land for now. Even though I'm more likely to mill a land with a Beastie. Next turn my play is likely still play another Fear, or I could break out, adding sorcery, and then hope to get lucky there as well. Close call. I think I ditched the land. Since I could just remove the Fear as well, which would add enchantment to the graveyard after all. Alright, they're gonna shock plus something else. Authority. Okay, that's unexpected. I guess they do get to attack past the Fear, but feels like they could have shocked me instead. Alright, added artifacts. So now with instants we get to Delirium. So can I present lethal here? If I Monstrous Rage plus Urge on the Beastie, goes up to 7 power, double strike, attacking twice. That should do it. Easy peasy. Yeah, that's the power of Violent Urge with Monstrous Rage. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a reasonable hand. Beastie and Breakout, good to enable Delirium early. Facing black-green. Do they have a duress? A Maverick, so it's a Roots deck. I will be milling as well. And then, yeah, maybe it's Breakout here, hope to hit Fear of Missing Out, discarding Artifact Creature. But even Curator could be useful, Graveyard Hate. Hit the Fear, that's ideal. And I'll ditch a Wicker Folk, so next turn I can 2+1. And we have Delirium. Beautiful. Yeah, Breakout was a huge addition for the red-green archetype. Makes it so much more likely to get Delirium on turn 2 already. Alright, Pilgrim is an unexpected twist, so they might be splashing white for Pilgrim. Maybe Ketramos also synergizes with the whole Tyvar plus Roots package. So now we would love to find our Violent Urge for Double Strike. Might have to just trade for the Pilgrim after all. And then still play Wicker Folk. Yeah, if I target the Wicker Folk here, they're more likely to trade for it. Alright, opponent says good game, so that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have turn, I guess, 3 Curators, since I won't have double green until I play my Mountain. So this one's pretty awkward. And this one's a little bit better. Can Seed of Hope on 1. Do I keep third land or third Wicker Folk? Probably keep the land, although I'm likely to find more with Seed of Hope. I can grab the Fear now instead. And then play Fear. Discard Wicker Folk, and we already have Delirium on turn 2. So Violent Urge is enabled. Just need our Monstrous Rage now. Opponent Blue-Red plots a Slick Shot. Wow, we actually got there. That's crazy. Turn 3 kill, folks. And that'll do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Our hand could use some more card types, but for now it's keepable. Get to Surveil on 1, turn 2 Fear. Maybe discarding Fear, adding Creature and Enchantment. And then we've got the combo of Violent Urge and Monstrous Rage. Can start by milling that one. And our opponent knows about Violent Urge in the deck, so they may play around it a little bit better. Red-whites, auras. Alright, so a lot of it boils down to whether or not they have their Sheltered by Ghosts. I think I still discard Fear and just hope they don't have it. This is the most likely way towards Delirium. And Breakout could get there. But if they remove my only creature, we're in trouble. I guess Breakout could find another one. For now, another Heartfire. Find another Breakout. And find a Beastie. So we have Delirium, that's got haste. Attack with both. And then I can Monstrous Rage the Beastie. Or I could Violent Urge and then next turn Monstrous Rage plus Urge. So then even if they have one removal spell, we still get to Wombo Combo. I doubt our opponent's trumping. Although they might trump with our second attack. So take 10, and then we're attacking for another 8. which I assume they chump. Nope, opponent falls to 2. So their best case, I guess, like Ethereal Armor plus Sheltered by Ghosts, or Sheltered plus Monstrous Rage. Yep. We get to keep the Fear. Opponent's back up to 5, but we have Trample and Double Strike. So good luck, have fun. Opponent decides to double block. And this is 2 times 12 damage, basically. And there we have it. Alright, so we get to see this red-green delirium aggro deck in action. And yeah, this deck at times left me speechless, presenting lethal on turn 3. So the wombo combo of Monstrous Rage and Violent Urge is definitely underexplored in Standard, it feels. And while it is a glass cannon deck that's pretty vulnerable to opposing interaction, can't really interact a whole lot with the opponent's deck, the fact that it can present lethal on turn 3 is at least worth looking at. So yeah, that's going to do it for today's gameplay. Want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.